There's a hidden war going on in higher education between old and new ways of teaching, and it's been waged for over 30 years in a way that is very unexpected. I'll tell you how the war started for me, and in case it's not clear, it's not a literal war. I'm using war as a metaphor. I might have used an exaggerated metaphor, but just to reassure you, no one, as far as I know, has died because of this thing I'm about to tell you about. Now, I was in the UK when I first started teaching psychology, which was way back in the early 1990s when I was doing my PhD. I started off teaching tutorials, which were held in classrooms rather than in lecture theatres. And unlike lecture theatres, the furniture in classrooms could be rearranged, and that meant you could configure the furniture to suit your teaching approach. The traditional teaching approach back then was a didactic one, where the lecturer stood at the front, students sat in rows, all facing the lecturer. It was based on the idea that teaching should be a one-way process with knowledge transmitted from the lecturer to the student. It's called the sage on the stage model. That's why lecture theatres are built the way they are. The lecturer is able to see all the students can see the lecturer, and the room is designed to ensure that the acoustics enable students to hear the lecturer, but not designed for the lecturer to necessarily hear the students or for students to hear each other. In fact, if students start talking in a lecture, it's usually seen as a bit of a problem. And when it came to tutorial rooms, they were usually set up in a similar way, tables and chairs arranged in rows, all facing the front of the class. But unlike in lecture theatres, you had the option to change that. And the reason to change that was if you adopted the guide at your side approach. This approach to learning and teaching is based on the idea that teaching should be more interactive, with students learning through interacting with other students while seeking occasional advice from the lecturer. And in the 1990s, some of us who were teaching at university were shifting to that alternative way of teaching because it was a better way of teaching. It was hard to do it in a lecture theatre because they were only really designed for didactic ways of teaching, but you could in a tutorial room once you rearranged the furniture so that students could sit in small circles rather than just face the lecturer. But tutorial rooms were never set up for that way of teaching, so you had to move the tables and chairs at the start of every class. And once you finished your class, you were expected to move the tables and chairs back again. And that meant you had to start tutorials late and finish them early because you had all that furniture to shift around at the start and end of the class. And fairly early on, I decided, nope, I wasn't going to shift the furniture back. I would leave the room in that guide at your side arrangement because it's a better way of teaching, and we needed to move away from didactic teaching, particularly in tutorials. And that's when the furniture wars began. So every morning, each room would be reset by campus staff who would ensure that the day started off with the teaching room arranged for the sage on the stage type teaching. When I got to the room, I'd rearrange it so that I could engage in that guide at your side teaching approach. And I'd leave it like that when the tutorial finished and I left the room. After a few weeks, signs started appearing in tutorial rooms instructing staff to leave the room with the furniture arranged in rows. But I ignored the notices, which resulted in more notices going up all around the place. And this was kind of developed into a sort of low intensity warfare, me against the campus managers. So I wasn't putting the furniture back in place, and the campus managers were putting up more and more notices, telling people like me to put the furniture back in rows. Stop leaving the furniture arranged in circles. So yeah, it went on for years and years in different universities across 2 different continents that I've been teaching in. Eventually, for me, the war ended when I ended up teaching at my present university, where my classes are now mostly run online. But even today, when I do go onto campus and have a look at the teaching rooms and see how they're still set up for that sage taking the stage. So what's going on? Are campus staff doggedly wanting to keep everyone in that didactic teaching approach? Well, that's not likely. The campus staff, specifically campus managers, were insisting that the furniture in teaching rooms was arranged in straight rows rather than circles, not because they wanted to encourage didactic teaching and discourage interactive teaching, but because it looked neat and tidy. It looked neat and tidy with chairs and tables arranged in nice symmetrical lines, nice straight lines. Their job was to make sure the campus was nice and clean, and having tables and chairs arranged in odd-shaped circles looked messy, but keeping the furniture arranged in nice linear patterns with straight lines meant that it looked clean, but it was really hard to teach in any other style than that didactic style, which is a linear style. You know, didactic teaching is linear. It draws a nice, simple, straight line, a unidirectional line just going in one direction, with transmitting knowledge from the lecturer to the student. Now, 30 years later, the same thing still goes on in universities now, even though today it's largely recognized that that sage on the stage approach to teaching is very limited, and where possible, you should be adopting the guide at your side approach. Now, what's the lesson to be learnt here? Well, it's that the didactic approach to teaching has been difficult to shift because it serves interests other than teaching. In this case, it served the interests of the campus managers because it checked the box in regards to meeting their obligations to keep the campus clean and tidy, or at least to make it look like the campus was clean and tidy. Now, didactic teaching serves lots of different interests, such as it serves the interests of lecturers in some ways because it's an effective way a lecturer can maintain their authority in the classroom, particularly through maintaining their status as the knowledge expert. You know, they're the only person worth listening to in the tutorial. But we need to understand all of the vested interests and to look out for lots of vested interests that are kind of hidden from us, such as the one where the campus managers associated classroom set up as messy when they were set up for interactive sessions and nice and tidy when they were set up for didactic sessions. So unless we understand all those vested interests, particularly the non-obvious ones, we're going to find it difficult challenging the status quo. And in this case, we're going to find it hard transforming how universities teach. You know, how university lecturers teach their students and how university students learn. Okay, that's all for now. Till next time. Ta-da.